Hey everyone, welcome to the Eat to Win show where sports nutrition meets peak performance. Get ready for expert insights, real stories, and tips to help you win with every meal. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Winner's Circle and the Eat to Win podcast show. I am Margaret Downs, a registered dietitian and board certified specialist in sports dietetics, and we are here to talk about all things sports nutrition and how we help athletes win. Today, we are excited to welcome Morgan Oubre, a senior undergraduate sports nutrition intern at the University of Arkansas. She is set to begin her master's in sports nutrition and exercise science at Texas Women's University and will be completing a dietetic internship focused in sports nutrition. So we're super excited to have Morgan here today to share her journey, which extends from some personal weightlifting experience and applying her experience applying to graduate school and being an intern in this amazing and exciting field. So let's dive in. Welcome, Morgan. We are so excited that you could be with us today, and thank you for your time and being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And so I just want to start out today with kind of giving our listeners a little insight to how you got here. Clearly, you're studying in this area of sports nutrition, and I'm sure you have a lot of great insights, even for practitioners who have been in the field for a while. Love hearing from people who have those fresh perspectives. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So when I graduated high school in 2021, and obviously that was during the COVID hit. And so when COVID hit, I was really, I feel like everyone was distraught and was trying to find hobbies and things like that. And I didn't grow up with the best nutritional knowledge. And so I first started, I think a lot of people decided, we're like, okay, let's get fit, let's start exercising and everything. And I started doing little workouts here and there at home and stuff like that. And I realized how much I loved when there was weight added and there was some kind of resistance training happening. And I was more excited to do that every day. And within that, I found that nutrition obviously is a really important part of resistance training and just in general, like overall health, when you want to be necessarily like perform better in something or do something better in a lifestyle wise for sports. And so I grew up playing like volleyball, softball, and I did dance. So I did grow up being an athlete. And I didn't have an outlet anymore because I stopped doing sports obviously because of COVID. And so I was like, okay, I need something to do. So I started weightlifting. I went to one of my friends' garages for their gym and started weightlifting every single day. And I started like focusing on nutrition, but I also had no idea what I was doing. And this was also during the time I was applying for colleges, and I was like, had no idea at one point what I wanted to major in. And then I kept thinking about it, kept thinking, my mom was like, well, why don't you are really passionate about weightlifting, you're passionate about nutrition. And she was like, you could do something like exercise science, or you could do something like human nutrition or something like that. And so I realized I was more in tune with the nutrition and like learning more about that, and realize how big of a world it was compared to just looking into weightlifting itself. And so I knew that I wanted to do something in nutrition. And that's when I decided to, no matter what school I was going to, I was going to do some kind of nutrition and dietetics. And that's when I found about registered dietitians. And I got super excited because finding out that that's a career when you're that age is like, especially if you love nutrition, is just amazing. And realizing that you can literally do it as a career. And so I decided that I was going to go to University of Arkansas, and then I was going to major in human nutrition and dietetics. And so
Super
I,
cool.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
amazing. And the program here is very amazing. We have a amazing DPD director, and her name is Michelle Bailey, and she is sadly retiring after this semester, but she has been a great outlet for all of the students here, especially applying for master programs and just honestly figuring out what they wanted to do after college. And so I've always had her in my corner to talk about things. And like she also, we have more than just a professional relationship. She does treat us genuinely like we're her own like family, and it's a very personal like outlet. It allows us as students to be able to actually tell her what's going on in our heads if we're stressed out about something or not. So, and then we also have a huge, being a SEC school, we have a huge sports related nutrition area. And so as soon as I found out about that and I started doing that as a senior, there's also all the sports dietitians here are more than happy to work with you and talk to you about what they do, and also shadowing them and going along with them. And they also obviously start that. So that's kind of how I grew my passion for it, was from weightlifting. And I started off powerlifting when I was first starting, and I did powerlifting. I did a powerlifting competition and meet my sophomore year of college. And now I'm kind of going into the bodybuilding realm, which is a whole nother world on its own. And so now I'm navigating nutrition through bodybuilding and also through other sports here at the school. So
Well, that is terrific. And it sounds like you just over time have, made some different connections with
mhm.
nutrition and developed this passion that's very evident in how you talk about it. I remember that moment too of finding out nutrition was a career and a degree major at the undergraduate level. And I was just blown away because no one talked about it in high school. It was like home ec. It was just the
Right.
old school, pathway to
Yeah.
education for dietitians. And in fact, one of my mentors was a home ec person who had kind of been grandfathered into the field. So nutrition is a new and young science still. And, we find out more and more every day, which is why I think your perspective is so important in how you're, bridging into the field at this point and can share those insights with us. So, great. Well, I would like to also find out, and you just kind of touched on a little bit of your experience as a sports nutrition intern, but really give us some insight to what you do in that role, especially for listeners who may be interested in pursuing that type of position, but also from the perspective of how you interact with athletes and what kind of guidance are you giving them?
So the sports nutrition here is a very organized program here. So I know I was personally, and I'm sure girls in the future, girls in my like in my position, it's nerve wracking when you first get into the field, because athletes, especially at the collegiate level, seem very intimidating. So it can seem, especially just like as an undergrad student, it's just like, oh, like I'm gonna have to like, like I'm excited to do it, but it's like these are athletes, like they don't always necessarily are going to want to listen to an undergrad student. And so I remember talking to our boss, and she was basically telling us, she was like, I would love to have you on board. It's not as bad as you think it is. It's more exciting once you, if you're passionate about it, to be able to talk to these athletes one on one, to create relationships with them, and be able to share your insight about nutrition. Like even though you're not a professional, like a professional that can actually help them with their eating habits or something like that, you can like give a little tips in here and there, and it actually will stick with them. And so I do mainly this year, I mainly do basketball, and then I work with the dietitians themselves by myself on Thursday. And so with the basketball athletes, I have learned over the process of being here for the year that it's more about actually having rapport with them and building a relationship first before, just throwing nutritional knowledge at them. Because I did realize athletes are people too. They're not these intimidating people. They're not also not all of them are super knowledgeable about nutrition. They also sometimes even more so need education on that manner. And so I've learned how to navigate talking to them about it, and also just making things seem more exciting to eat or to do than they actually want to do it. Because a lot of the time, especially male athletes, they don't want to do something, or they don't want to take their vitamins or something like that. So it's just navigating having to give them ways in order for it to, like, seem beneficial for them. Because athletes are also very busy people, and so they just always need, a reason in order to do something, and that's what you have to work with. And so, when I'm doing my delivery shifts, bringing them snacks, or whether I'm making smoothies for them for post practice, or we're getting game day ready for them by making them snack bags or something like that. I make sure that the athletes actually know why they're eating certain things, and like we'll make little education documents for them, so they just actually know when you're supposed to eat a carb, when are you supposed to eating protein, what are these things doing for your body. Same thing with their supplements. And so it has given me a lot of insight on what the dietitians do in order to work with their athletes and actually speak through to them instead of just saying this is what you should eat, because like I said, they're not a patient, they're an athlete, so they're going to be a little bit more hesitant to listen to you, obviously. So
Well, those are really great perspectives, and sharing just kind of how you have learned how to interact and building that relationship and rapport as being a key entryway into being able to share more information. And it kind of gives the relationship permission then to expand, which is always a plus. So great perspective there. What are some key takeaways that you would like to share with maybe other students who are in undergraduate studies? How do you feel like your undergraduate preparation has prepared you for a master's and your dietetic internship?
So, when it comes to, I would say that my classes that I've taken here, and the knowledge I've gained through just my professors, um, dietetics is obviously not a one-way approach. Every person's different, whether that's whoever you're treating, whether that's an athlete, someone of the community, or a patient themselves in a hospital. They all need a different approach for dietetics, and it's not like this is their diagnosis, this is how you treat them. Every person is different, especially based off of where they're at in their nutritional knowledge. And so I believe I've learned nutrition assessment's very important, in order to actually understand what the patient knows or what the athlete knows about a certain food group, or how they should eat during after their practices or after their games. So actually meeting down to the level of the person themselves, and not just observing and throwing information at them. Also just never giving any kind of like advice where you're creating food to be bad or good, especially with athletes, because athletes are one of the most eating disordered, like have the prevalence of eating disorders among people. And I know how important it is that you tell them that all foods have benefits, whether that's pleasure or it's just actual nutritional benefit. And so I've learned that it's really important to teach them what the food is for, what's important for, and how to have the best peak performance based off of their nutritional habits and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you sound so much like I was as a younger dietitian, and just some of the feedback assessment, for example. I mean, I taught assessment for years, and
Mhm.
just, I mean, I'm so passionate about it because it is the foundational platform for
Mhm.
then any recommendations that we're going to try to provide. And so, really understanding how to do that well, and especially with an athletic person. Um, so, our CSSD exam also really focuses on those biochemical attributes of athletes. And then also, the eating disorders components are also a huge piece of study for
Mhm.
us as specialists, because it is a population that is prone to have just eating disturbances or a lot of eating noise around
Mhm.
their performance. So great pickups, I feel like they're so early on in your career. And it sounds like you're also working with a number of sports dietitians developing um, your path. So
Mhm.
way to get out there in front of it. We're going to just take a quick break. Stay with us as we take a short break to thank our sponsors. You are listening to the Eat to Win podcast show with Margaret Downs, and we will be back in just a moment. Liquid Fuel is a new sports and hydration product formulated by a sports dietitian to give athletes the edge to train and compete longer. It contains low glycemic carbohydrate platinose designed to keep blood sugar levels more stable, to provide energy for 3 to 4 hours without the blood sugar crash seen in other leading sports drinks. Its unique 4-part electrolyte formula includes 50% of your daily magnesium need to optimize muscle function. Liquid Fuel is naturally sweetened, along with no artificial ingredients or colors. Currently being used by high school, collegiate, and professional teams, Liquid Fuel allows you to live life with confidence, knowing you're properly fueling your body. Visit drinkliquidfuel.com and use the code MSD10 to get 10% off your order. So welcome back to the Eat to Win podcast, where we're talking with Morgan Oubre about pursuing a career in sports nutrition. So let's jump back in. We've been talking a little bit about what Morgan's doing now in her current role as a intern in a sports nutrition program at the University of Arkansas. Let's kind of switch gears and talk about where you're headed, which is into your master's program. And she is going to be at the Texas Women's University. So this is a very competitive process, applying to graduate school, and knowing that is something that is extremely stressful. So walk us through your application process. What made this particular university stand out to you and want to continue your education and training there?
Yeah. So, obviously the whole process, um, can be very intimidating at first when you don't know where you should go and what you should do and how to look for, especially if you're wanting to pursue sports. Only certain amount of schools offer a sports focused nutritional master's program or internship or something like that. And I would say the first piece of advice is not to just only look for sports related programs, because no matter what, you're going to get a good nutritional basis, and you can ask for rotations in the internship that can actually relate to sports if it's not all sports related. And at the end of the day, you're taking an RD exam. It's not just going to be about sports. And so you want to make sure that you have a full basis knowledge of all that kind of stuff. But that being said, I found Texas Women's as one of the schools that did offer sports. And I wanted to apply and see if they were able to, if they saw me as a good candidate, because they have a lot of cool like programs within their internship for sports. So they do Ironman training, and they work with the Rice athletes, and at Rice University, and also at University of Houston, they work with the U of H athletes. And so I knew that I wanted to have some kind of part of my internship that was just dedicated to sports. And so for mine, not only is it a exercise science and sports nutrition master's, but it's the dietetic internship itself has a sports practicum in it, where I will be doing those things, and I'll be focusing more on what sports dietitians do, which will obviously give me a better knowledge for sports dietetics, and for future careers, they'll see that I have that experience and I didn't just focus on clinical or community-based nutrition.
Will you still
Um,
be getting the community and clinical components in your, yeah. So it'll kind of come
yeah,
in your internship though through your
yes.
master's
Yeah.
curriculum.
So
Okay.
yeah, the beginning will be like clinical community, and then towards the end is when I have my practicum, and that'll be mainly sports.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I love how the new accreditation standards have kind of worked it in as here you are doing your master's, but you're also over here doing your internship. And it has kind of bridged the gap in some ways, even though the
Yeah.
transition was really hard. Because I was actually teaching when we were making that transition into the new
Yeah.
accreditation standards. So it was a very interesting bridging project. Um, But yeah, exciting. So, how do you see your future career evolving in sports nutrition? Where would you like to see yourself in the next, 3 to 5 years?
I really I've thought about this a lot and I've tried to navigate because there's so many things that you can get into when you do sports dietetics. And I really try to navigate what I wanted to do and what kind of athletes I wanted to focus on. And obviously, coming from my own experience, I do have a lot of knowledge about single person like athletes, like people that are individual in their sport and not really as much as team based. And so I love doing team-based, I love being around the teams, but I do see myself as working one-on-one with people,
Mhm.
such as wrestling or weightlifting, or even Olympic weightlifting, hopefully. And even on the side, hopefully doing bodybuilding and powerlifting, since those aren't obviously usually sports at schools. But that being said, as I
Still,
would
like tons of people, are
yeah.
so into these aspects of sport. And,
Mhm.
so many recreational athletes out there that just need guidance.
Right. And that's why I wanna and I want and you that's why I talked about it a little bit earlier, is I do want to get the eating disorder specialization certification because I do want to help athletes that are struggling with disordered eating or in general just struggling with having a sound mind about eating in general and not having the best relationship. And so I would love to get that certification so I could eventually do private practice with athletes that have eating disorders. So that's like my end goal is doing that. But I obviously like it takes private practice is something that you develop and not something you just go into. And so I want to start off doing individual sports and working with those athletes, getting an understanding of how their minds work, and then go into private practice and focus more on eating disorders with athletes.
Super, super. Well, that sounds like some really great goals that you have. So, if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice that you would share about your academic or internship process, what would that be?
I would definitely say to get involved with whatever sports program there is at your school if you're at a university or any kind of sports related nutritional experiences you can get within your area. I do think that experience is very important not only for um, applying for your master's, but also for just understanding it and making sure that you are passionate about it because a lot of people I think can glamorize sports and can make it seem like it's what everybody wants to do until they do it. And that's when you either decide you love it or you hate it. So I decided I loved it, but
It's
also just
hard work.
yeah,
It's hard
getting
work.
experience in the field will make you realize if you love it or not.
It's
So
nights, it's weekends,
yeah.
it's in accordance with athletic schedules. And so
Hmm.
extremely busy and also
Yeah.
very food service oriented in many cases as well. So that food
Oh,
service
yeah.
administrative component comes into play and another area that a lot of dietitians should think about developing.
Right. And
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So I want to leave our listeners with your contact information. Surely there may be some people out here who really want to contact you and find out a little bit more about how you've done the things that you've done, a really neat pathway that you're taking into the field. And so, how can people get in touch with you, Morgan?
Yeah, so all of the platforms I'm going to say are Morgan Oob, and then obviously, as they'll
And
see in
that's
the description.
Oubre.
Yes, does not sound the way it's like it's spelled, but it's yeah.
Oubre is the way we
Yes,
spell your last name. Okay.
and that's my Instagram, my LinkedIn, and then also my email is Morgan Oob, and then 10@yahoo.com.
Perfect. Well, Morgan, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story with us today. That is it for today's episode of the Winner's Circle and the Eat to Win podcast show. A big thank you to Morgan Oob for sharing her journey in sports nutrition, from weightlifting inspiration to applying for graduate programs and dietetic internships. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and share with your community. And until next time, keep winning.
Thanks for joining us on the E2 Win Show. Remember, every meal is a step toward victory. Until next time, stay strong and keep winning.